Welcome everyone to the 2020 State of the City program. Thanks so much for being here tonight. And let's have another round of applause for those wonderful high schoolers from Bloomington High School North, the John Layton Quintet. We're gathering tonight to celebrate another year of building our community, to reflect on our progress, and to chart our way forward. Kicking off his second term, Mayor John Hamilton will be presenting his fifth State of the City address tonight. And to mark the occasion, we've assembled a few of the folks who make Bloomington, our musicians. So we have more musical entertainment for you. First, tonight, we will turn to the music of Mexico, from the hard bop tradition that we started in. The band that we are about to hear, the Mariachi del Perla, Medio, Oeste, the Pearl of the Midwest, by the way, is a group committed to the cultivation and promotion of the Mexican-American and Mexican music and culture. Its members, originally from the US, Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia, and Hong Kong, include IU undergrad and grad students, faculty and staff, and members of the larger Bloomington community. The group is jointly sponsored by the Latin American Music Center at the Jacobs School of Music, La Casa Cultural Center, and the IU Department of Folklore and Ethnomusicology. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Mariachi Perla del Medio Oeste.
Sabes mejor que nadie que me fallaste, que lo que prometiste se te olvidó. Sabes a ciencia cierta que me fallaste, aunque nadie te amara igual que yo. Dile a quien pregunte que te engañaba. Dile que te engañaba, que fui lo peor. Y allá en el otro mundo, en vez de infierno, encuentres gloria, y que una nube de tu memoria me borre a mí. Dile a quien pregunte que no te quise. Dile que te engañaba, que fui lo peor. Échame a mí la culpa de lo que pasa. Cúbrete tú la espalda con mi dolor. Y allá en el otro mundo, que en vez de infierno encuentres gloria, y que una nube de tu memoria me borre a mí. Dile al que pregunte que no te quise. Dile que te engañaba, que fui lo peor. Échame a mí la culpa de lo que pasa. Cúbrete tú la espalda con mi dolor. Y allá en el otro mundo, que en vez de infierno encuentres gloria, gloria y que una nube de tu memoria me borre a mí. Y que allá en el otro mundo, que en vez de infierno encuentres gloria y que una nube de tu memoria me borre a mí. Gracias. Muy buenas noches. We are Mariachi La Perla Medio, Oeste, and we are dedicated to make traditional Mexican music. Our ensemble is conformed by community members and students at IU. Thank you so much. Now we'll hear Jarabe Tapatío.
Hello, at this moment, I will be introducing all of our members. On violin, we have Gabriel, Hippocrates, Andreina, Steve, Hannah, and Lexi, and Esteban, and me, Sarah. And on trumpet, we have Zach and Jose. On guitarrón, we have Alex, and on vihuela, we have Ivan. This next song is called Y Volveré. Amor a Dios, no se puede continuar, ya la magia terminó, ahora tengo que marchar. Será
mejor seguir nuestra soledad. Hoy el cielo se nubló, quizás mañana brille el sol. No sufras más, quizás mañana nuestro llanto quede atrás. Y si me dices que tu amor me esperará, seré la luz que mi sendero alumbrará. Y volveré como un ave que retorna a su nidal. Verás que pronto volveré y me quedaré con esa paz que siempre, siempre tú me das, que tú me das. No sufras más, quizás mañana nuestro llanto queda atrás. Y si me dices que tu amor me esperará, será la luz que mi sendero alumbrará. Y volveré como un ave que retorna a su nidal. Verás que pronto volveré y me quedaré con esa paz que siempre, siempre tú me das, que tú me das. Y volveré, a tus brazos caeré, las estrellas brillarán. Nuestro amor renacerá, renacerá. Muchas gracias.
Oh my goodness. The Mariachi Perla del Medio Oeste. And don't worry, they'll be back for one more number. I still have chills. Well, before we go on, we do have some business to take care of. That's rather abrupt, sorry. Tonight's event, in addition to giving us a chance to gather as a community to listen to some beautiful music and to hear an address by the mayor, is officially a meeting of the Bloomington Common Council. So next, the meeting will be called to order by Council President Steve Volin.
This meeting will come to order. This is a special session of the Bloomington Common Council for the 20th of February 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Flaherty. Here. Piedmont Smith. Here. Rosenberger. Scambaluri. Scambaluri is here, although she cannot speak very loudly. And Councilmember Volin.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Sorry that so many of our members are out of town, but we have enough to conduct business. Several items on the agenda tonight, the final of which is a report on the state of the city from the Honorable Mayor John Hamilton. I want to acknowledge everyone who's here tonight, and I want to in particular point out members of IU Student Government who are here tonight, Joe Bergen, Jake Rowland, and Benjamin May from the City Relations Committee of IU Student Government. I thank them for their attendance. I'm wearing a piece of flair tonight, my favorite projecting sign. This is the sign of the Indiana Theater, and I just wanted to acknowledge the building that we're in and the service of its recently retired director, Danielle McClelland, and the new director just announced today, Juliana Crespo. I want to wish him luck and say thanks to both of them for their service. Speaking of flair, I'm adding one more piece of flair to my lapel. This is a sign that reminds you that this year is the 2020 census. April 1st is Census Day. It's important to get everyone counted. Speaking of students, students are to be counted, as the census says, where they usually reside. So it's important that everyone who is in Bloomington be counted here. For more information, you can see your program talks about the census. Please visit it and become familiar with it and tell everyone to complete the census. With that, I just want to say that the meeting will adjourn with the conclusion of the mayor's remarks. I want to thank you for coming tonight, and I will turn it back over to Yael Cassander. Thank you.
So now that the meeting is officially underway, and before the mayor's address, I would like to introduce one more guest who will be reading an original story. Juliana Crespo was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and moved to California at the age of 6. She went on to live in several other states, but 12 years ago, Bloomington called to her through IU's MFA creative writing program. And she hasn't left since, at least not for long. Juliana is an English teacher at Bloomington High School South, a published writer, and a hip-hop dancer. She lives with her partner, her 10-year-old daughter, and the family kitten. For this reading of her story, Midsummer's Eve in Indiana, Juliana will be accompanied by another Bloomington treasure, Travis Pontarelli.
Okay, hello Bloomington. That was quite an introduction. Okay, I am really incredibly honored to have been invited to read tonight, and that's because Bloomington is my community. And my gift to you for being my community is a story I call Midsummer's Eve in Indiana. Like many Bloomingtonians, I am a transplant. My journey in Bloomington began with grad school. But my journey ended up being much more than that. I became an adult here, which means that I became a more reflective, connected, and compassionate individual, or that's what I tell myself. The fact that it happened right here in our beautiful, magical community is no coincidence. Bloomington has the ability to transform you and make you feel as though you're home. Midsummer's Eve in Indiana is an exploration of how that happened for me. So now let me begin my story, Midsummer's Eve in Indiana. When I was in my late 20s, I bargained with a French landlord. I'd give him $900 per month for his 3-bedroom French cottage with its red ceramic floors, instead of the $1,200 he'd originally asked for. Surprisingly, he agreed. This squat, middle-aged man with white tufts of hair who spoke at a quick clip. While some of you might think we were in France, we weren't. We were right here in Bloomington, where I'd moved the year before for the MFA program in creative writing at Indiana University. 13 years later, that French landlord and the home I rented from him in the near West Side neighborhood still evoke what Bloomington means for me, or means to me. Here we have the richness of diversity, a world where Brazilians, such as myself, and Frenchmen, such as Patrick, can cross paths and even negotiate. Here we have community too. Though I moved out of Patrick's home when I was pregnant, this was about 11 years ago, to this day, he greets me by name if I happen to stroll by his restaurant. This past summer, we ran into each other one Saturday morning during farmer's market, and he said to me with his typical flair, "Ah, Juliana, I have someone for you to meet." He then took me by the hand and dragged me into his restaurant, where he introduced me to a shy Brazilian girl who had just started working for him. She reminded me of myself when I first arrived here. Which brings me back to where we started. During the time I lived in that French cottage, I began to recognize the subtle magic of Bloomington. It was an entirely different world from Reno, where I'd lived before. Now, if you've been to Reno, you know that it's rugged, austere, and masculine. But Bloomington, she's the yin to Reno's yang, a charming goddess whose evening skies are resplendent with peach and magenta, colors you want to eat for dessert. Her forests are luxuriously clothed in emerald robes, and her wildflowers are dainty denizens that flaunt their vivid colors. That summer, this lushness was rampant in my neighbor's yard, which was more of a miniature forest where cats lazed about like lions, their bellies turned up to the sun. The bird feeders were plenty, a treat for the birds that flocked to them, their beaks hungrily pecking. The older woman who lived there, a respected environmentalist, often strolled through her wild garden, her dress like a comfortable, loose pillowcase. Her cats flounced after her and wrapped themselves around her ankles, their small, heart-shaped faces turned up in apparent devotion. I'd watch with yearning from my office window, eventually turning to my computer to fitfully type out a few sentences. Classes would be starting soon enough, but I'd spent too much time vacillating between different stories wanting to be told. I could write a story based on my grandmother, a tough, sweet-hearted woman who raised me in the favelas of Rio. Or I could write a story about a young boy who'd lost his mother to cancer. The idea had returned to me time and time again, asking to be explored. Yet none of these stories felt right. And when you're a writer, you have to wait for inspiration to hit you like lightning. And that's what happened. One day, I was riding my bike home from work, a summer waitressing job, when the sky filled with black clouds. Soon, the rain began to pour, an unexpected waterfall. Pedestrians ran for cover, laughing or screaming or both. Street puddles skirted up around my bike like sheets of lace, and before long, I was drenched. I could have cursed the rain. Instead, I found myself smiling as I pedaled up the hill toward home. My muscles strained and my lungs burned, but I was exuberant, more alive than I'd been since I could remember. I arrived home just as silver danced across the sky, the rumbling following close behind. The world turned midnight blue. The air smelled wet and green. I changed and dried my hair with a towel, and then I sat down at my desk. The rain tapped out a staccato rhythm against the window as I typed. Outside, the trees shook, lightning occasionally casting them in its surreal glow. A new story unspooled, the words assembling themselves like they'd been there all along. The main character was an old, eccentric woman who cared nothing about society and loved everything about nature. And then there were her cats, who kept her better company than any human companion. Their world consisted of leisurely naps, strolls through the woods, and potions that transformed seasons. Eventually, I looked up from my writing to see that the sun had broken through the clouds. Across the street, my neighbor was descending the porch steps, her feet bare. I closed my laptop and stepped outside too, wandered to the very edge of my yard. She glanced at me and smiled, pointed to the sky. I lifted my face, and there it was, a rainbow stretching across all of Bloomington, an embrace that held all of us together. "Oh," I whispered. My neighbor laughed, the sound open and free, a bird song that had already found its way into one of my stories, just like Bloomington had.
Thank you, Juliana Crespo and Travis Pontarelli. And now one more song from the Mariachi Perla del Medio Oeste before the address by Mayor Hamilton.
Thanks again for having us. We're going to play a Mexican polka called El Sopilote Mojado.
Okay, thank you very much. Does Bloomington have talent or what, huh? Woo! Nice, nice. So I want to welcome you here. It is really good to see everybody tonight. First, note Kathleen Bennett, I want to thank you for signing tonight. Kathleen is doing that for us. Thank you, Kathleen. We appreciate that. And thanks to the City Council for being here, Clerk Bolden, other elected officials, and all of you. It is really good to see you. This is my 5th State of the Union, as was mentioned, and may I say that I am always excited and energized to get together, to think about where we came from, where we are, and maybe best about where we're going. And as, again, we've enjoyed the great music and spoken word from John Layton and the Jazz Quintet from Bloomington High School North, the musicians from Mariachi, Perla del Medio, Oeste, and Juliana Crespo, teacher and writer extraordinaire, Bloomington High School South. We thank them. Juliana shared her story this evening about the way our city has inspired her. Each of you here, each of you, every one of us in Bloomington has a story, unique, also sometimes familiar. The vibrant community we call home, palpable in the room tonight, is made up of all of those individual stories. Every one of them matters in the big story of Bloomington. Every one counts. Everyone counts. That's our theme for the evening and what must be our focus going forward. We're going to talk about the census, that every 10 years event Mr. Volan mentioned, getting everyone counted. We're going to talk together also about the decade in front of us, the 2020s. It's energizing to think about what we can make that decade mean. You and I, us, working together to make sure that everyone counts in Bloomington's future. Think about a sustainable Bloomington and about climate change, how our actions in the next 10 years are vital in limiting irreversible damage, and how everyone counts in getting that done. And also about the simultaneous need to ensure that everyone has a place in that future, that no one gets left behind or left out. Every single resident counts, deserves a future and respect, a voice, a vote, a home, a job, a good life. And before we dig into that future and how we create it, let's remember just some achievements of the past 12 months. Milestones already moving us toward the future we are striving to create. Bloomington has been very busy with a lot to celebrate. 3 months ago, we cut a ribbon on a new city treasure, Switchyard Park, transforming this longtime railroad switchyard into a 60-acre green space, much needed on the southwest side, enticing young and old to come out and play with a pavilion, a performance stage to welcome new and regional happenings. The Mill completed its first full year of operation, won an award as the state's best historic rehab, and expanded faster than any co-work space in Indiana history. We opened Beeline Heights, affordable housing right in the heart of the Trades District. We just sold the Kiln to a local consortium ready to reactivate that old brick building into a hub for the new economy with a Soma coffee house to boot, which is nice. We opened a new senior center at the mall. Young people by the hundreds got active with youth participatory budgeting, strengthening our democracy and our community together. Watch for the cool new moss wall they voted for. Speaking of voting, Bloomington voters brought 4 new faces to our city council and returned 5 familiar ones in January. Nice to see you all. We welcomed also new public art from internationally renowned artists. One reason Bloomington earned in 2019 National Award for Local Arts Leadership. The medical manufacturer Catalent, after its $1 billion initial investment in their Bloomington facility in 2017, last year announced an expansion of $125 million and 200 new good-paying jobs. A big thumbs up for our life sciences industry. And of course, 24/7, we protect public safety with lower crime and the third year in a row with 0 fire fatalities. We deliver clean water, operate buses and plows and sanitation pickups. We inspect apartments and repair potholes, run day camps and pools and movies and concerts, and help Bloomingtonians have better lives. Looking to the year ahead, many of these things continue, plus some exciting new things. I'll mention just a few. You should join in the public engagement starting this spring for the redevelopment of the current hospital site. 24 acres full of potential for affordable housing, green space, a new neighborhood in the heart of our downtown. This year should also see the design and financing details for the convention center expansion to strengthen and boost our downtown economy. The Stride Crisis Diversion Center is slated to open this spring, a place to help people in crisis who don't belong in jail or the hospital. Our Transportation Demand Management Report arrives next month. A new digital divide survey and a climate vulnerability assessment are both coming soon. And so many great events in the coming months, like Black History Month annual gala in 9 days, like the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, kind of cool for 2020, the 200th anniversary of IU, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, our 3rd annual street fair on Kirkwood, and more celebrations of arts, trails, jobs, and affordable housing. So much goes on in our creative, dynamic, always improving city. Now, for more details, go to our website, or come into my office, or catch Dawn or me around town. By the way, First Lady Dawn Johnson, can we give it up for First Lady, the hardest working First Lady we love, for all you do for Bloomington. Thank you. And also for our city staff, by the way, if you are a city staff member, if you work for the city, would you please stand up or wave, but stand if you're able, and let us thank you and all 800 city employees who work for us every day, every year. Thank you. Come on, get up, let's go. There we go, thank you. Woo! Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask you all to take a deep breath and join me in casting our gaze farther into the future that we can build together. The poet Robert Browning said, "Our reach should always exceed our grasp." We always need to be striving to reach things beyond our grasp. And tonight, I want to focus on what we should reach for here in Bloomington. Now, let me briefly note that beyond our community, at the state and national levels, what's happening can be incredibly challenging and distressing. I hope, like me, you're tenaciously committed to change and better results this November and beyond. I know so many of you are so involved in that work, and that's terribly important for all the things we'll talk about tonight. But during our time tonight, I'm not dealing much with national and state politics. Another time. And you can find Dawn and me around town anytime if you want to talk about that too. Just catch us. Let's make this evening a session of local focus, local therapy, to remember how much we can do for each other, how much we can mean to each other, and the future we can shape together right here. Because I do believe that we together here in Bloomington, even in the face of frustrating state and national trends, can chart a course for our community that is exciting and positive, transformative, to bring more opportunity and more justice, more peace, and more joy right here. Now, first, for the coming decade, it is essential that we count who we are. The census, required by the U.S. Constitution every 10 years, it determines our voting power, it determines financial power, money for infrastructure projects, community nonprofits, others. We need to be sure that everyone is counted. Everyone counts. It's also important as a message that says everyone belongs here. We need to know you're here, whether you sleep in a big fancy house or an apartment or a dorm, or if you're sleeping outside or in a shelter. Whether you've been here your whole life or just came last week, whether you speak English as your first language or not, whether you are documented or not, whatever your story, you count and we want you counted. Everyone counts, making up our Bloomington story. The census mailings will begin next month in March for households to respond online, by phone, or by mail. Census workers will follow up with home visits if they don't hear from you, starting in mid-May. Your responses will remain private and cannot by law be shared with law enforcement or immigration or affect any benefits you receive. So we're counting on you. If just 1 out of every 300 people in Bloomington is missed, our community could lose about $1 million a year. And by the way, if you're interested, information about working as a census taker is available in the lobby this evening. Once we're counted, we're ready for the 2020s. Let's start with some facts. Our planet is in trouble. In their 2018 report, the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, sounded an alarm. By 2030, global greenhouse emissions must be reduced by 45%, they said, toward a goal of net zero by 2050. Why? Scientists agree that those reductions will likely limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade from pre-industrial levels. And although even that rise has already had dramatic and cascading effects on rainfall, heat events, sea level, habitat, and biodiversity, if we can limit the temperature rise to 1.5 and not higher, we can avoid the most devastating effects that could make much of this world largely uninhabitable. Just last week, the Antarctic continent hit its hottest recorded temperature ever, 65 degrees in Antarctica. And last summer, the Arctic region broke its all-time heat record at 70 degrees. Closer to home, Indiana's average temperatures are expected to rise 5 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit in the next 30 years, giving southern Indiana up to 51 extremely hot days a year and threatening our state's agricultural productivity and drinking water supplies. Some more facts about our work ahead also need emphasizing. We know that our country is also leaving so many people behind or sidelined. Over the last 40 years, worker productivity has increased 134%, but worker hourly compensation has barely budged. Many of you know 3 wealthy Americans today own more wealth than 160 million Americans put together. 41% of America's children live in low-income families, 41%. And the median white American family owns 40 times more wealth than the median black family, nearly 150,000 to less than 4,000. And they own 20 times more wealth than the median Latinx family, with 6,500. Now, these challenges, I think, are really 2 sides of the same coin. We must do our part to save our planet, and we must leave no one behind. Everyone counts. 2 vital questions face us. First, by the time we get to 2030, will we have charted the course for a future where our planet and our community will physically be habitable and sustainable? And second, will we have a place for everyone at the new table? I believe in my bones we can get this right. It is true we cannot magically control greenhouse gas emissions of countries around the world. But together we can address our carbon footprint here in Bloomington and do our part along with hundreds of the world's progressive cities. And true, we cannot assure opportunity and respect for all those now being left behind in our state, our country, our world. But together we can build a community right here in southern Indiana over the next decade that shows everyone belongs here and can thrive here. We can make the 2020s a turning point, a decade of action steering us toward that bright future. Now, if we listen, we hear that our community has been calling for this already. In our biannual city survey, where our residents express their values and goals, an overwhelming 90% of respondents consistently want the city to help residents experiencing homelessness with housing and also with job training and substance use disorder services. We are compassionate and we want action. Similar numbers rate affordable and workforce housing as in dramatically short supply and needing more city support. We want action. We also unequivocally want a diverse and welcoming community, and one here strong support for biking, walking, transit services, infrastructure. This is the city our residents, you, want. You tell us in city government, that's what you want. Last fall, hundreds of climate activists, mostly young people, demonstrated inside City Hall on 2 occasions, demanding that the city take significant action on addressing climate change. And they are right. They remind us of our moral obligation to future generations to do our part to address our climate emergency. We have no planet B. Are we ready to answer today's 10-year-olds when they turn 20 and ask, what did you do during the 2020s to turn things around? Does any one of us want to leave a planet in tatters with flooded coasts, extreme weather, disrupted agriculture, commerce, global turmoil? We have to act. Our community has been calling for serious action on climate change and for serious action on inclusion and opportunity for all. Now, we are positioned to meet the challenge of doing our part to protect our physical world and community, our planet. We are positioned. But I'd say we are not yet provisioned. We are ready, but we need strong steps and the plan and the resources to accomplish it. Everyone counts in this. We all need to do our part during the make and break decade of the 2020s. A great deal of good work is already underway in Bloomington that we should celebrate. As part of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, Bloomington has joined 10,000 cities around the world that pledge to report our emissions to the Global Disclosure System and work to curb them. Here's something to be proud of. Just this week, that international project announced that Bloomington is one of 105 of those cities, representing 170 million people across the globe, who made the group's A list for leadership and transparency on climate action. That's a big deal. That's good. There were more recognitions on the national level. Bloomington received the Milestone Achievement Award for Greenhouse Gas Emissions Management. We were named an EPA Green Power Partner. At a state level, IDEM gave us the Governor's Greening the Government Award. And Environment America Research and Policy Center recognized us among 250 cities in the country, making solar energy a key element of our community's energy plans. Our local efforts are making a difference. Our water utility launched a new $4 million green stormwater infrastructure program and is installing 15,000 new smart water meters. Bloomington Transit just bought its second all-electric bus, joining a hybrid fleet. Last year's urban forest report found that we have increased the city's public tree population over 50% in the last 12 years. Solar investments have soared in the community, with PV systems at 32 city properties, 5 megawatts of new solar capacity for municipal operations and private homeowners. $10 million in bicentennial bonds are adding more public trails, trees, and other amenities to improve health and quality of life for all. We are shaping more sustainable land use with projects like the redevelopment of the hospital site and with robust tools like our newly passed zoning code. A new local food coordinator connects local farmers with new markets and institutional buyers, and our Waste to Energy Task Force finished phase 1 and recommends exploring a viable system to collect and convert organic waste into clean, green, compressed natural gas to power vehicles and/or water treatment. Phase 2 will begin immediately. We have our first ever sustainability plan in place with specific measurable goals through 2023. We've completed our reliable greenhouse gas inventory. We're doing a climate vulnerability assessment now, seeking the community's input. And our transportation demand management study I mentioned will promote better transportation options and fewer car trips. These are all good and important actions. But there's sobering news too. Because we live in an area so dominated by coal and natural gas energy production, Bloomington's per capita carbon footprint is higher than the national average. Right now, despite all this good work. Now, Bloomington's footprint is substantially better than Indiana's as a whole. As a state, Indiana is one of the 10 worst in the country per capita. But we are still above the national average. One relevant fact you can see on the right is our electricity provider generates less than 1% of its Indiana electricity from renewable sources. This is where we could spend a little time about the importance of state and national advocacy, but that is another day, as I promised. What we do in the 2020s will determine whether we can achieve sustainability and net zero by 2050. Our greenhouse gas inventory tells us quite clearly where change will need to come. You can see the slices of the greenhouse gas pie. We have to change how we all get around with more public transit, walking, biking, ride sharing, carpooling, and the like, and fewer solo car trips, lowering the carbon impact of our mobility, that blue on the right. We must significantly improve the energy efficiency of the buildings in which we live, work, learn, and play. Much of the red. We have to diversify and clean up our energy sources overall, expanding local production, renewable production like solar. We have to evolve where we live, our housing patterns, so we drive less. And we must improve how we deal with our waste, our water, and our food growing and consuming patterns. Bloomington is well positioned, but now we need to be provisioned to implement the plans we need for the 2020s. More in a moment on the need for more resources through a sustainability investment fund. But before that, we need to consider the second of our dual imperatives, because doing our part locally to join in saving a planet from climate catastrophe is not enough if we don't also have a community that offers successful quality lives to all of us humans living here. Lowering our carbon footprint is half the battle. The other half is making sure that our community has a place for everyone, that everyone counts, that as we move to a sustainable economy and address climate change, we also remedy injustices and failures that destine so many of our people to lives of pinched opportunities or worse. More specifically, building a more inclusive community with opportunity for all during our decade of action means accelerating our momentum to deal with affordable housing, so people of all walks of life can live in Bloomington, raising their quality of life. It means assuring that we have jobs for all who can work, that pay living wages and support lives of dignity, including particularly green jobs that won't be outsourced or automated away. It means lowering the costs of living here, including with lower energy and lower transportation costs, so effective wages and wealth can go up. It means investing in local food so that our essential food supply gives us much needed resilience and also supports more of those local green jobs. And it means ensuring supportive services are there for those who need them to deal with an illness or substance use disorder or disability or lack of job readiness or skills or young kids needing daycare during working hours, so no one is left behind or on the wayside as we transform into a sustainable Bloomington. Let me say as well that as we address these basics of housing, jobs, transportation, food, safety net, and more, to assure that everyone counts, everyone belongs, we also must address the legacies of racism and injustice that persist today, right here. We explicitly need to imagine and work toward a 2030 where belonging is actual and universal, where in Bloomington, the color of one's skin or the zip code or country of one's birth or the language one first learned or whom one loves or the gender one identifies with, that none of that determines opportunities or possibilities. We know Bloomington today carries legacies of racism and of class divisions. We see bias incidents every year. We know very well that racism and bigotry are present still and demand our collective efforts to overcome them. As we work toward a Bloomington where everyone truly belongs, we must address all these legacies directly. Bloomington has been and is doing a lot in many ways to improve our community so everyone belongs. You know this. We've added hundreds of units of long-term affordable housing to Bloomington. Partners like Centerstone, Life Designs, Habitat for Humanity, Shalom, the Housing Authority, SIHO, or our newest CDFI-friendly Bloomington. Every year, we invest, the council appropriates hundreds of thousands of local dollars directly into our safety net through the Jack Hopkins Fund, also now boosted with another $100,000 per year dedicated to child care support. Siren has helped numerous low-income homeowners install their own solar systems to lower costs and carbon impact. We believe the new Stride Crisis Diversion Center will help transform individual lives dramatically. Our state-leading transit system is exploring new routes and new micro-mobility options to enhance how we move around town. Our new local food coordinator works with local farmers and buyers to strengthen local agriculture. Our Bloomington Police Department was the first in the state to hire a dedicated social worker who, along with 2 neighborhood resource officers and an after-hours ambassador, are forging stronger community connections to promote inclusion, belonging, and safety. And our new Bridge initiative, grown out of the farmers market challenges last year, is a community-led effort to focus on deep and persistent racial legacies and challenges to recommend action steps as a community. These are good and important things going on now to create a more inclusive and welcoming Bloomington, but we know we have a great deal of work still ahead, with many Bloomingtonians still not able to live the lives they want to live. So these 2 imperatives, doing our part to save the planet and assuring we have a place at the table for everyone, these pose very big challenges in the decade ahead. But they are huge opportunities too. They are huge opportunities to create the culture and society that we hope for fervently, but that can seem beyond our grasp. Notice similarities between these 2 lists of challenges. Doing the right thing for our sustainable planet also lets us do the right thing for each other, to do the things at the same time that will help us have the kind of community we want, more just, more livable, more equitable, more full of opportunity and high quality of life, with better food and jobs and health and lifestyles. This is a big deal as our community is doing our part to save a planet. We're also building a society that looks more like what we reach for. Now let me offer a reality check. We cannot expect to meet great challenges and achieve great things in the coming decade without new efforts and new resources. We cannot transform our community to be what we want by just continuing to do what we've been doing with the resources we've been investing. It requires mobilizing new energy and resources. State law defines how we can raise local revenues. So I have proposed what I see as our best option. a 0.5% increase to our local income tax, which we can dedicate to sustainable economic development. This substantial new income should be focused on addressing these dual challenges, pursuing these dual opportunities over the next decade for a much more sustainable Bloomington. Over the next decade, this new income would let the city invest an additional approximately $80 million toward our better Bloomington, and provide the county with an additional $80 million as well. This would support major progress toward the changes our community wants to see in areas we know are so important to us all. Now, this chart shows just one example of the scale of financial impact this can have, and it may not be easy to see, but you can see the green bars with the new revenue reflect, this is one potential description, a potential 40% increase in the annual transit operating budget, a doubling of affordable housing investments and clean energy investments annually, and a quintupling of local food support. This is just one example to show the potential scale of impact of this approach. And a note about our financial capacity. We are in very good shape with strong fiscal reserves to protect against any economic downturns. And it's important to note that among Indiana's 20 largest cities, Bloomington is a very low-tax city. Specifically, we are in the lowest quartile of those 20 cities, both for property tax rates and for the local income tax rate, the bottom quartile of the top 20 cities. Today, we have the lowest local income tax rate of all 7 of our contiguous counties. And after passing a 0.5% local income tax, we would still have the 3rd lowest rate of those 7 contiguous counties. The tax would cost $50 annually for every $10,000 of taxable income. That makes one part of this challenge very clear: to be sure to invest in changes that will produce much more than that in benefits to our lower income residents, better transportation options, housing options, better energy options, better food options, quality of life. So all this data I've thrown there tells us 2 basic things. First, these are very significant investments relative to our current level of investments in these key areas. They could help transform our community over the next decade to be where we want to be by 2030, a much more sustainable community headed toward net zero energy, and a much more truly inclusive society where everyone belongs and has a place. And second, we have the financial capacity responsibly to make these investments, given our current healthy fiscal position and our relative position in Indiana. And let's be clear, these are investments, not expenses, investments in a better future, the future we want, the future our residents tell us that they want to change Bloomington. These investments would let us look at today's 10-year-olds in the eye 10 years from now, in 2030, and say we did our level best during the 20s. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, there are lots of details yet to be determined. Before any votes on this proposed tax, before any votes on next year's budget, this conversation started just about 7 weeks ago. It's good. Many of us are talking about options. The process to decide all this must be and will be wide open and inclusive. I've been laying out some ideas and options. Collaboration and engagement will be key among the city council, county colleagues, advocates, of course, the public at large, to help consider how revenues can and should be used, starting in 2021 and for 10 years through the decade. You can weigh in right now at the city website. You could do it on your smartphone if you want. Give us some ideas about how to look at the ideas and options. And there will be many, many more events and opportunities to explore ideas and options in coming months, including a convening hosted by City Council on Thursday, March 5th at the Mill at 7 o'clock in the evening. So please mark that down if you're interested. So here's a summary from tonight. Bloomington is in a strong position with great momentum on many fronts and in a strong financial condition. We're facing and we're positioned to meet some very big challenges, big opportunities ahead. It is time to accelerate our momentum and investments. So I am calling for the Local Income Tax Council to act on this 0.5 increase by summer, for the city to create a transformative sustainability investment fund. The decade of the 2020s has begun, and we need enthusiastically to grasp the opportunities in front of us. I'm also activating our waste to energy effort, version 2.0, to evaluate whether we can convert waste in our community into energy in viable ways. And I will be forming the Green Ribbon panel outlined last month to meet by the end of next month. This group of public, private, nonprofit representatives, multi-generational, regional, will help advise and build momentum on our green goals. So serving as your mayor for these past 4 years, I have been to hundreds of meetings, and I've heard thousands of you talk about your hopes and dreams for Bloomington. I've heard the stories you want told and lived in Bloomington. I'm very proud of what we have all done together to help so many write so many new and good stories. Today, I hear the call for more. I hear young people challenge us to do our part this next decade to become the city and community we want to be. I hear people ask, how are we going to really welcome new residents with affordable housing, with good jobs, with high quality of life, so diverse people from all walks of life can truly belong? I hear people ask, do we have a better way to help those struggling with substance use disorder? I hear people ask, can we build more trails and connections and encourage more bikers and walkers? I hear parents wonder if their kids will have the same options they had 25 years ago. I hear kids wonder if they'll have a planet to live on and a place to fit in. So tonight we've looked at 2030. We've talked about our reach, what we should be reaching toward. Now, I want to ask you for a moment here as we wrap up. Where is your sanctuary? Your place of safety, haven, special time? Where do you go to center yourself and decide what's important, to gain strength for hard things? Where or with whom do you check yourself and your values to see if you're living your values, if we are living our values as a community? Whether that's a religious place or a place of nature or an activity or a gathering of special people, I'm asking you to go there. You can imagine it right now, but go there too and think about what is Bloomington's proper role in the 2020s? And what is your role in that 2020 decade? All this isn't easy. I can tell you're sitting there, it's like, it's not easy. This isn't easy. In fact, it's hard. But this community has always done hard things. We have pulled limestone from the earth. We have built a world-class university in the middle of southern Indiana forests. We've dealt with industrial pollution and Superfund sites. We have invented life-saving stents and built the first color televisions. We've saved an iconic courthouse. We have leaned into our progressive values amid a conservative state. We're a blueberry in a bowl of tomato soup. Bloomington can do this stuff. So my friends, the state of Bloomington is strong. We're a community full of energy and potential where everyone counts. And it is our turn to make the 2020s a decade to remember. Thank you, and good night.